Hello everybody. This is my booklet cover. This week's assignment is going to be to create a cover for a small booklet, 3.5 inches wide by 4.5 inches high. I'm just going to have you use Photoshop to make some sort of interesting background that utilizes one color. And I did all the text in Photoshop, so I'm going to show you a couple things about using text in Photoshop. And also that background, isolating an image or isolating something in a photo, in this case, which is the flower, and making that bright and colorful and leaving everything else grayscale. That's a technique I'm going to show you as well. Okay, and a few other things. It's called Yellow Flowers JPEG. Double click the background, hit OK, unlock that background there right away. If you go to image size, you can see it's already 300 pixels per inch. Hit OK. Here's where the notes come in. Okay, go to image, adjustments, desaturate. It's still an RGB file, but you've desaturated the color so that it looks all grayscale. Okay? Now go to the history brush tool. It's right here in the middle. There's also art history brush tool. You want the history brush tool. You can, like the brush tool, adjust this diameter of the area you're going to affect. You can do this with the mouse or a Wacom tablet. I'm actually going to use a Wacom tablet. A little more control that way, but I think for the purposes of this assignment, a mouse will be just fine. So now what I'm going to do is think about like you're coloring back in the object. So these petals I'm going to be hitting. So you want the brush to be just maybe a little bit smaller than the petals, in my case anyways. It depends on what you're doing, of course. Good enough. And then just click and drag and see what happens. I'm going to use my Wacom tool here. And one thing you can do is just to get the big part of it out of the way, make a huge brush. Just save you a little time. Say you want to do both flowers, to get most of it out of the way there. And it's sort of like this is revealing, and this is revealing through a mask. Think of it that way, okay? Smaller because I want to kind of just draw in where the petals come to a point, and I'll zoom in so you guys can see a little better. Whoop. And all I'm doing is clicking and dragging. That's it. If you go, if you screw something up, go to Control Z, will take you back once. If you want to go back more than one step, remember your history window history. You can go back more than one step if you would like. Okay, so but all you're doing now is just having fun with revealing whatever it is you want to be a color. And then I also am going to change the color here and show you how to do that as well. Whoops. I'm not going to, do exactly the same thing that I did. I probably couldn't, even if I wanted to, remember every little detail. If you have time, take your time. Make it look professional. You'll have to adjust the diameter widths of your brush, or just figure out what works best for you. In my case, I'm just kind of using a bigger brush on those points just to kind of simplify it a little bit, make it more graphic designy. So I'm choosing what I want to reveal. And then I just hit Control Z, because that was a continuous click and drag. See, I haven't let up yet on the click and drag. Stop finally, I just let up. If I go to Control Z, I go back to where I started. Okay, you see that? So one technique is you go a little bit, stop, pick up your mouse, your Wacom pen, and then you go a little, you draw a little bit, and then you stop, pick it up. That way, and stop and pick it. If you have to go to Control Z, you're not going back so far. Okay, does that make sense? But I'll finish this here. And I only need to finish the right flower because I'm going to crop off the whole left side. Isn't that cool though? It's fun to do. That's it. File save. So that's how to isolate that color from the background. Isn't that neat? You're using the art history tool. Okay, so if you want to do that, now we want to change the color. I think, yeah, we're going for that blue, almost a purple. Okay, so you go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. Hue is color. And you see how it's affecting just what we didn't mask out. Isn't that cool? So, I'm going to make it blue. I don't want to do that. Something like that. And then I cropped this entire right side, so let's just do that right away. You can click and drag if you want. I think I kept a lot of this. Then you can hit enter. Oops, I missed the top part. Remember, if you see that checker pattern, enter, that means it's a transparency somewhere. Alright, that's pretty much what I did, I think. But you see, because we used the history brush, we revealed what was in our history. This is everything we did. And you can see all the way to the left there's a little icon here, and wherever that is, that shows you what you're revealing. In this case, it's the original yellow flowers.jpg file, that yellow inside, and then we did an adjustment to make it go from yellow to blue. Okay, does that make sense? I know that's kind of complicated, but I think some of you might really appreciate that, or all of you. Okay, so now one thing I did some filters. Let's try filter, blur. Let's do a surface blur. Not so much though. You guys can do whatever you want. Maybe you can do an image, adjustments, brightness, contrast. Filter, gallery, dry brush, cutout, palette knife, watercolor. I like watercolor. I usually like to put the brush detail high and the shadow intensity low. It's not so cheesy. You can go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation. Image Adjustments, Brightness, Contrast. See, now I'm just playing around. And this looks different than this, but maybe that's okay. I'm just, you experiment to get to what you want. And I think I'm gonna say to myself, that's not so bad. File, save. Oh, cancel. I'm just gonna go to File, Save. All right, so that's how to isolate that one part to make it a color, and then that's a few tricks right there. Let me show you a couple more. Filter, distort, pinch. That can be kind of a neat one. You don't get a preview except this little diagram here, but that's what it will kind of do. If you slide the amount, you can either go a bulge or a pinch. Okay, and then you hit OK, and that's what happens. I think in this case I'd rather have a bulge. Filter, distort, pinch, and you see how you can kind of just make it look like a ball here. Hit OK. Yeah, I like that. Save. And what else did I do? Text. Well, let's get to text. I found a font that I really like on the internet. I found it at defont.com. I think it was a search for decorative. I'm not sure though. I think that's what it was. And it's Flower Power. This looks like a similar font, or at least inspired by the font that comes up at the beginning of Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, that classic Kubrick movie with Peter Sellers in the 60s. And so I found this. This was kind of a find. I think this is a really neat font. But it can be hard to read if you have too busy a background, and I'm kind of bumping up against that problem. But it's called WK Sleepy Time. So if we go back to Photoshop, select your type tool. Now you can do a click and drag large to get like a type box, and then type in your headline. What was my headline again? I forgot. Valinda's Last Spell. Go to Window, Character, and also go to Window, Paragraph is good too. Mine's already up. This is really good to have Character Panel, because a lot of what you do with your text blocks will be right there. Okay. So with your Type tool, select the text. Now watch this. If I have my type tool inserted, the text selected or not, I can carefully, as soon as you find that little arrow show up, you can make the text box bigger and smaller. Okay? But if you click off of it, if I click on the Move tool, move it up a little bit. Okay, and now I try to do that, you see I'm actually warping the text. You see that? So that's a crucial difference. You can't move your text box when you got the Move tool on. That's just going to warp it. Alright, the only way to do that is have your text tool selected and somehow clicked in to the text box, and then that way you can make your text box bigger and smaller. Okay. Anyways, select all your text. Here's your point size, so you can choose something big and kind of figure out. Another trick, and I'm just going to tell you this, is Control Shift and then your left and right bracket, or caret, I guess it's what it is. Left and right. It's the two keys to the left of the question mark on your keyboard. If you go to Control Shift, left is make it smaller, right is make it bigger. Okay. But anyways, in your character panel, that's how you do it right here. You would type in whatever text you would want. I think I'm going to type in 30, and then right here it's the space in between lines, and this is how you have a little more control. I'm going to try 15. I'm going to try 25. You see how that lines up precisely like that? I like that, and I'm going to leave that. Okay. I think I'm going to make the text darker. The first thing you have to do when you're affecting the text color in Photoshop is go to your Tools panel, and where your foreground and background color is, you want to choose a foreground color that's the color you want. So double click on the foreground color, and in my case I'm going to make a dark black, like a rich black. So you can go like 60, 60, 60, and then 100K. You see how I did that build? You can do the same thing in CMYK and RGB, but you can just build your own color, hit OK. So whatever color the foreground color is what it's going to go to. Okay, so watch. I'll select the text, and then you have to click on that swatch again. Don't forget that. Hit OK, and then it changes the color. Okay? There, that's kind of what I wanted. Something like that, maybe. Let's see what it looks like light. We'll make it a white color. If you want to make it white, just click on the foreground color. And if you type in under CMYK all zeros and tab, use the tab key, that'll give you white because 0000 is white. Click OK, and now you've got white text. That's not so bad. Oops, I forgot the letter here though. Make that white as well. Hit save, because you want to save often, because you never know when your computer's going to crash. So here's kind of another version. Belinda's last spell. And I'm going to create another text box for the byline. Poems, Illustration, and Memoirs by Slayton Brisk. Yeah, that's not bad. And if I want to bring these lines together, remember, right here is letting 15. If you want to bring these two lines up, select just those two lines, and then maybe go 10. See that? Maybe 12. It's a little more control than you can get in Publisher with letting. And as long as I've got my text box, my type tool, I can do this, which is move the text box around just a little bit. Enter. Okay. So that's, just a little bit of Photoshop. Do I like it? Well, it's maybe this is hard to read right here. Let me try making that a dark color. Center it more maybe. And so, I'm just moving it with the move tool. Click on this other text box with the move tool, and I'm just using my arrows, my up and down arrows. And now I'm just trying to center it. This is alignment, just trying to line up everything logically. File save. And that's really all you have to do for the assignment. Something like that, some kind of groovy background that's 300 pixels per inch, 3.5 by 4.5. Let's go to image size. Oh, we forgot to do that. Okay, so we want to make sure your file size is right. When I cropped that original file, it was 300 pixels per inch, which is good, and I was close to the right size. We're supposed to get to 3.5 by 4.5, but I'm not quite there yet. So if we constrain proportions, go to resample bigger, type in 3.5, and you can see we're almost at 4.5. Let's hit OK. Go back to image size again, and now click off of constrain proportions, and you can just stretch the entire image just slightly. You see what I'm saying? Watch. Bicubic for enlargement. Resample, but you're not constraining. If I just type in 4.5, it'll keep the 3.5 width the same. Hit OK, and now we're perfect. File save. If we go to image size, now we got 3.5 wide by 4.5 high at 300 pixels per inch. Perfect. Now let me do something to the text. I've got two text layers. I'm going to do an adjustment to the subtitle, Poems, Illustration, Memoirs. I'm going to make some kind of effect on that. So I'll click on that layer in my layers panel. Excuse me. And with my type tool, I will select the text. And if you look to the top of your control panel, you have options up here. One thing you can do is you can choose how the edges will look, crisp, strong, or smooth. You can also choose the font size up here, and you can alter the font. You can also do some tracking, I believe, with this icon, but nothing's coming up at the moment. Here, let me try again. Toggle text orientation. Okay, so this icon here will let you run text vertical or horizontal. Okay, that's kind of neat. And this icon I'm locked out of at the moment. Okay, so, and if you look straight up, there's an icon. It's a T with a big curve. It's called Create Warped Text. If you click on that, that's a trick you can do as well. There's a drop-down menu, and you can click if you want to arc, and then you can adjust what kind of arc it is and what type of distortion you have. But please use this very sparingly, because it's sort of not as good as type on a path, but it can give you a neat curve if you're so looking for. Let's say I wanted to do that. I could if I so choose to, but I'm not going to. So we'll go back in my history, and what I want to do though is add an outer glow to the Poems, Illustration, and Memoirs text, and also the byline. And that text is on one layer, and I've got that layer highlighted. And on the bottom of your layers panel, there's FX icon. That's for adding a layer style or effects. If you click on that, you can choose an effect that way, but it will, by clicking on that, it'll also take you to a layer style dialog box. I'm going to cancel. You can also get there by selecting your layer, and then on the drop down options arrow you can choose blending options. Same thing. Okay, now that takes you to blending options. I have my preview clicked. I think I like the drop shadow. Click OK, and it gives a little more beef to the Poems, Illustrations, and Memoirs copy. Yeah, a little bit easier to read. And the last thing I'm going to do now is create bleeds. Now this is an example where I'm using Photoshop for the text and the background, and you can do that if you're comfortable with that. You can skip publisher. At least at this point we're just making the cover, but if you want to work in pages, the cover, the back, and then inside pages, you will have to use a design program like Publisher or InDesign where you can create pages. Photoshop is not a page layout program, but you can just do the cover here. And so how I would do the bleeds, we've got, remember, a 3.5 inch by 4.5 inch document, and that's exactly the size we want, our document size, cut size. But I want to add an 1/8 inch bleed all the way around. I want to leave the text exactly where it is, centered in the flower like it is, and below the flower, but I want to just drag the whole background image out, make it a little bit bigger by 1/8 inch each side, which is a 1/4 inch per dimension. And I can do that in Photoshop by first of all going to Image, Canvas Size, and I'm going to make the entire canvas, not the image size, a 1/4 inch bigger on each dimension, 3.75. This is similar to what you were doing in Publisher, by 4.75. Click OK, and now you can see how it made everything on the outside just a little bit bigger, and that's showing you the transparency behind that. Okay, what I'm going to do is click on the layer, the flower layer, the background, and I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger. Control T or Edit, Free Transform. Now it's 300 pixels per inch, so normally I wouldn't recommend that you drag a raster image to make it bigger, because remember the idea that there's only so many pixels and the pixels will get bigger to fill the space. This is an exception because I'm only dragging it out a tiny little bit, and the difference in print quality is you won't see it at all. Okay, so if you're just simply dragging out bleeds and you're okay with making your background a little bit bigger, you can do that right here in Photoshop. You can drag from the corners, or you can just drag from the sides and just make sure it's all the way to the edge. Hit the Enter key, and I just use the arrow keys to toggle. As long as you have your Move tool selected, you can use your arrow keys to toggle around. Control T, Free Transform. I'm going to just pull the top up slightly, just a little bit more. And there. Now we've got a file that is 3.75 by 4.75, which accounts for the bleeds. But the text, because they're on separate layers, you see, hasn't gotten any bigger or changed at all. Okay? I'm going to just save it. And so that's how you can do a cover, which is this week's homework, using just Photoshop. Okay, so now the only thing that we're missing is crop marks, and there is no function in Photoshop like there is in Publisher and InDesign to export a PDF for crop marks. So what I'm going to do is save a file for Publisher. And I'm going to just flatten everything so that there's no text layers, which are editable. I mean, you just don't need it. And I also am going to convert this file to CMYK before I export for Publisher. So I'll go to Image, Mode, CMYK, and I'm going to merge my layers. Click OK. You see how the color shifted? Because remember, two different color spaces. It won't print as bright as it looks in RGB space. And now I'm going to save a JPEG, which is a file that you need to save for Publisher. File, save for web. And I've got a JPEG selected. I've got a high quality selected. That's good, which is 60. Save. And I'm in a hurry here. I'm just going to save to my desktop. I'm going to just call it cover, hit save, and now I'm going to open up Publisher. So this is an example where I did everything in Photoshop, including bleeds, and I'm just using Publisher so that I can have nice crop marks. Okay, or if I wanted to, I could export a PDF which has more than one up per page. Okay, so I'll click on a blank. Okay, then I'm going to go to Page Design, Page Setup, and I'm going to type in not just the, right at this point I'm going to type in the dimensions with the bleeds, okay, because when you import a graphic into Publisher, remember it shrinks it a little bit, so I want to be able to drag it out all the way to 4.75 by or 3.75 by 4.75. I want to make sure the file is exactly the right size, and instead of multiple pages, which you could do, I'm going to choose one page per sheet, type in 3.75 by 4.75, one page per sheet, click OK, and then I'm going to insert the file, which I conveniently saved to my desktop cover. So you see how it opens it a little bit smaller. I'm not sure why Publisher does that, but so you need to make sure that it's dragged to 100% to actual size, which accounts for bleeds. Okay, so that's 4.75 high, 3.75 wide, and now I'll go back to page design, page setup, and I'll change my width to the actual cut dimensions, which is 3.5 by 4.5. Click OK. And now you've got a file with bleeds. To export the PDF for print, again, this is a review. Go to Export, Create PDF, and I'm going to name my file Week 10 Homework Abbots. Save as type PDF, and now click Options. High quality printing, make sure that's selected. Print options, and make sure you're at one page per sheet, and you want crop marks and allow bleeds under your printer marks options to be selected. Okay, and you'll see a preview. All right, for this you can print it on a size letter. All right, and click OK. Publish. And now this is you should see a preview popping up pretty soon. There we go. This is Adobe Reader preview. And this is exactly what I'll be looking for. It'll be a 3.5 by 4.5 inch document centered on letter paper with bleeds and crop marks. Okay, and this will be your print file. And this will be what's due Sunday by 10 o'clock. All right.